In this video, we look at a spring oscillating horizontally and derive the differential equation that describes this type of harmonic motion. A cart is attached to a horizontally oriented spring. It is displaced from its equilibrium position and then released. The cart begins to oscillate periodically around the equilibrium. Its motion takes place between two turning points. At these points of maximum displacement, the direction of motion reverses. In an ideal, frictionless system, the cart repeatedly reaches these turning points and passes through its original equilibrium position. This position is also called the zero crossing, where the cart moves with maximum speed. Let us now examine the process from a kinetic perspective in more detail. Initially, the cart is at rest in its equilibrium position. We displace the cart a certain distance to the right, stretching the spring to its maximum. At this point, a restoring spring force acts on the cart in the opposite direction, that is, to the left. Once the cart is released, this force accelerates it back toward the equilibrium position. The cart is therefore accelerated opposite to its displacement and begins to move faster and faster. As the displacement decreases, both the spring tension and the accelerating force decrease. The closer the cart gets to the equilibrium position, the weaker the acceleration becomes. This means that the velocity continues to increase, but not as strongly as before. At the equilibrium position, the spring is relaxed and no spring force acts on the cart. The cart is no longer accelerated and reaches its maximum speed at this equilibrium position. Due to its inertia, however, it does not stop there but continues moving. After passing through the equilibrium position, the spring is compressed. A spring force now acts again, this time opposing the motion. The cart is gradually slowed down as the spring is increasingly compressed and the opposing force grows. Eventually, the cart comes to a stop at the left turning point, where the spring is maximally compressed. From there, the spring accelerates the cart again toward the equilibrium position. At the equilibrium position, it reaches its maximum speed once more before the spring force slows it down again. At the right turning point, the cart returns to its initial position and the cycle begins anew. As explained in the introductory video on oscillations, the formation of a mechanical oscillation requires a restoring force. This force continuously pulls the body back toward the equilibrium, opposite to its displacement. In our case, the spring force acts as the restoring force, always opposing the displacement. According to Hooke's law, displacement and restoring force are proportional, resulting in harmonic motion. As we will see shortly, this type of oscillation can be described using a cosine function. As we saw in the video on the equations of motion for harmonic oscillations, the motion of the spring pendulum closely resembles the projected motion of a point on a rotating disk, suggesting that the motion function of the spring pendulum corresponds to that of a point on a rotating disk with angular velocity omega. Whether this is actually the case still needs to be verified. The goal is therefore to establish a condition to check whether the derived motion function truly describes the oscillatory motion of the spring pendulum. To do this, the motion of the cart must be represented mathematically in a coordinate system. We place the origin of this coordinate system at the equilibrium position and define the positive direction to the right. Now consider the oscillating cart at any point with a positive displacement. The spring force acting there is always directed so that it pulls the cart back toward the equilibrium, opposite to the displacement. The displacement S corresponds directly to the extension of the spring. According to Hooke's law, the restoring force F is determined by the displacement S and the spring constant D. For an accurate mathematical description, it is important to note that the restoring force always acts opposite to the displacement. If the cart is to the right of the equilibrium, the force acts to the left, in the negative coordinate direction, with a corresponding negative sign. If the cart is to the left of the equilibrium, the force acts to the right, in the positive coordinate direction, with a positive sign. To account for this direction, a negative sign is introduced in Hooke's law. Due to this restoring force, the cart experiences an acceleration determined by the basic equation of mechanics as the quotient of force and the mass being accelerated. In this analysis, we neglect the mass of the spring compared to that of the cart. In reality, the spring force also accelerates part of the spring itself, as its coils are compressed or stretched during oscillation. We ignore this effect in our consideration. Under this assumption, the acceleration A of the cart at any displaced position S is given as described. This displacement is also often referred to as elongation. While the cart oscillates, both displacement and acceleration change over time. They are therefore time-dependent quantities, whereas the spring constant and the mass of the cart remain constant. We indicate this explicitly in the equation by denoting the time dependence. As described qualitatively at the beginning, displacement and acceleration are not independent of each other. At the equilibrium position, for example, where the displacement is 0, the acceleration is also 0. At the points of maximum displacement, that is, at the turning points, the acceleration reaches its maximum magnitude. The time course of the cart's position and its acceleration are therefore interconnected. Both functions are related, and this relationship will be explained in general terms in the following. As an example, consider the motion of a car on a road. This motion can be illustrated in a time-position diagram, informally also called a time-distance diagram. From this diagram, the velocity of the car can be determined relatively easily, because in a time-position diagram, the slope of the curve corresponds to the velocity. By differentiating the position function with respect to time, we obtain the velocity function. From this time-velocity diagram, the time-acceleration diagram can in turn be derived quite easily. In a time-velocity diagram, the slope of the curve corresponds to the acceleration. By differentiating the velocity function with respect to time, we obtain the acceleration function. We see that by taking the second time derivative of the position function, we obtain the acceleration function. The time course of the acceleration therefore corresponds directly to the second derivative of the position over time. This relationship is not limited to the example of a car, but applies generally to all types of motion. Using this relationship, we obtain the following equation, which describes the spring oscillation. This is a special type of equation. Unlike ordinary equations that involve only static variables, it involves functions, in this case, the displacement function s of time t. Furthermore, the equation contains not only the function itself, but also its derivatives. Such an equation is called a differential equation. Since the second time derivative appears in this case, it is specifically a second-order differential equation. This establishes the condition in the form of a differential equation that must be satisfied for a motion function s of t to describe the oscillation of the spring pendulum. It is important to note that a differential equation cannot generally be solved in the classical sense for the unknown quantity, in this case the function s of t. Instead, a candidate function must first be proposed, and then it can be tested by substitution into the differential equation to check whether it satisfies the equation consistently, and if so, under what condition. If a candidate function does not satisfy the differential equation, for example because a contradiction arises, then that function clearly does not describe the problem associated with the differential equation. Only if a candidate function passes the test consistently does it correctly describe the problem associated with the differential equation, in this case, the motion of the spring pendulum. Before considering a possible solution to the differential equation, we rearrange the equation by dividing it by the displacement function. How should this equation be interpreted? Clearly, the right-hand side of the equation consists only of constants, since neither the spring constant nor the mass changes over time. This means that when we divide the second derivative of the displacement function by the function itself, the time-dependent terms must cancel, and the resulting quotient must be negative. This condition is satisfied by a cosine function, because the second derivative of a cosine function is itself a negative cosine function. This both eliminates the time-dependent term and ensures that the quotient is negative. The same principle applies to a sine function, so a sine function could also be used instead of a cosine function. The second derivative of a sine function also yields a negative sine function. At this point, we see that only a cosine or sine function can be a solution to the differential equation, since we already have a hypothesis about the specific solution in the form of projected circular motion. We can now substitute the corresponding motion function and its second-time derivative into the differential equation to determine under what conditions this function satisfies the equation. As explained earlier, after substitution, the cosine term cancels. The maximum displacement, S max, also cancels, and the negative sign disappears. If, by the way, the negative sign in Hooke's law had been neglected, a contradiction would have occurred here, because the square of a value cannot yield a negative number. The proposed motion function would then lead to a contradiction and would not be a solution to the differential equation. In this case, we finally obtain the relationship that the angular velocity omega equals the square root of d divided by m. From a physical perspective, this relationship is consistent. This can be verified, among other things, by comparing the units. The angular velocity, omega, has the unit of radians per second, which also applies to the square root expression on the right-hand side. To show this, we express the spring constant in newtons per meter and the mass in kilograms. In this way, we obtain the given expression. According to the basic equation of mechanics, the unit of force can be expressed as the product of mass and acceleration. This leaves the unit of 1 per square second. Taking the square root then gives the angular velocity in units of radians per second. It is therefore clear that no contradiction arises when the motion function of the projected circular motion is substituted into the differential equation of the spring pendulum. The resulting equation should be interpreted as follows. The motion function of a point projected from a rotating disk also describes the oscillation of the spring pendulum, provided that the angular velocity omega is set to the value of the square root of d divided by m. This can easily be verified experimentally. For a spring constant of d equals 400 newtons per meter and a cart with a mass of m equals 1 kilogram, the angular velocity of the disk should be set to omega equals 20 radians per second. This angular velocity corresponds to a rotational frequency of f equals 3.18 hertz, or 191 revolutions per minute. Under this condition, the projection of the circular motion and the motion of the oscillating spring pendulum are completely synchronized. Both motions can thus be described by the same function. As explained in detail in the video on the equations of motion for harmonic oscillations, the velocity and acceleration functions can be determined by taking the first and second derivatives of the displacement function, respectively. In this way, the indicated functions are obtained. It should be noted that the term omega as angular velocity can be somewhat misleading in the context of a spring pendulum, since the pendulum itself does not, in the literal sense, have an angular velocity. The term angular velocity should always be understood in connection with a rotating disk whose projection corresponds to the oscillatory motion. The rotational frequency of the disk is related to the angular velocity as indicated. Since the motion of the spring pendulum is synchronized with the projected circular motion, the frequency at which the disk rotates is identical to the oscillation frequency of the spring pendulum. Therefore, the oscillation frequency can be determined from the spring constant and the pendulum mass as indicated. Since the frequency is inversely proportional to the period of the spring oscillation can also be determined as shown. As the formula shows, the frequency or period obviously depends only on the spring constant and the mass of the pendulum. In particular, the initial displacement from the equilibrium position has no effect. Whether the spring pendulum is displaced only slightly or very far from equilibrium, this does not affect the period or frequency of the oscillation. A larger displacement increases the distance traveled within a period, but the higher spring force also increases the acceleration and thus the average velocity, so these effects cancel each other out. Next, the oscillation will be examined from an energetic perspective. If the pendulum is displaced to its maximum at the start of the oscillation, work must first be done to stretch the spring. For an initial displacement of S max, the spring system therefore possesses the corresponding potential energy, Ws max. This stored energy is then converted into kinetic energy when the pendulum is released, reaching a maximum at the equilibrium position where the potential energy has been completely transformed into kinetic energy. According to the law of conservation of energy, this results in the indicated relationship between the square of the maximum velocity and the square of the maximum displacement.
Taking the square root on both sides gives the stated relationship. The square root of the quotient of the spring constant and the pendulum mass corresponds precisely to the angular velocity. In this way, the already known relationship between maximum displacement and maximum velocity is obtained. At all other times, when the pendulum does not have its maximum displacement or maximum velocity, the total energy stored in the spring oscillation is given by the sum of the current potential energy of the spring and the kinetic energy of the oscillating mass. Since both displacement and velocity are time-dependent quantities, this principle also applies to the potential and kinetic energy. However, because we consider the frictionless case of an undamped oscillation, the total energy, as the sum of the two energies, does not depend on time, since no energy is lost or added. This will be demonstrated in the following. For this purpose, we substitute the corresponding equations for displacement and velocity into the formula for the total energy. We then square the individual terms in the brackets, obtaining the indicated equation. Next, we use the relationship that the maximum velocity equals the product of the angular velocity and the maximum displacement. Squaring this relationship yields the stated equation. We then use the given relationship that the square of the angular velocity equals the quotient of the spring constant and the pendulum mass. This eliminates the mass and results in the given equation. In both terms, the red-marked expression 1/2 ds max squared appears. This expression can now be factored out. Inside the bracket, we obtain the blue-marked expression cosine squared plus sine squared. Using the Pythagorean theorem, as illustrated on the unit circle, we see that this expression equals 1. It is now shown that the total energy at any given time is indeed independent of time and always equals the initially stored potential energy. The accompanying diagram shows the time course of potential, kinetic, and total energy compared with the displacement and velocity. From the diagrams, it is evident that the kinetic and potential energy oscillate at twice the frequency of the displacement and velocity. This ultimately results from squaring the displacement or velocity, which effectively shifts the negative half-wave of the oscillation into the positive range.
I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more.